Put your seatbelts on and get ready for the ride. We're the freaking New York Jets, so we're built for this shit.
Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Sunday, April 20th. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far today. This is episode 525 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. For those tuning in on YouTube, make sure to please like and subscribe. Of course, appreciate all of those tuning in on all the different audio podcast platforms. And we are just 4 days away from the 2025 NFL Draft. I cannot wait. We will finally get the answers over Thursday, Friday, and Saturday as Darren Muji, Aaron Glenn, and the rest of this Jets new regime continue to fill out this roster in what is a pivotal first draft for this new regime. And today on the podcast, I wanted to break down in a scenario where the New York Jets would potentially trade back in this draft. I want to break down some draft options that could be available if the Jets decide to move up and find a team, move back rather, and find a team that is willing to move up to that number 7 overall pick. So we'll break that down in today's podcast. As always, though, before we begin, we got to get you our podcast partners, starting with our friends over at BetUS, America's favorite online sportsbook. NBA and NHL playoffs are in full swing. If you want to get in on any of the playoff betting action or sports betting action in general, check them out at BetUS. Use my link in the description of this video to get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Also, our friends over at SeatGeek. If you want any of the hottest tickets in sports or the best in entertainment, check them out. And if it's your first time using SeatGeek, use code BUBSONSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase and get yourself out to some awesome events. And of course, our friends over at Huga House. If you want the hat I'm wearing right now or any of their other awesome selection of hats and sweatshirts, check them out. Use code BUBS for 15% off any purchase and get yourself some awesome Huga House swag. So here we go, episode 525. Thank you as always for joining us. Obviously, every day, really a ton, every week rather, every day, it feels like every day, we've talked about Tyler Warren, Armand Membu, and the number 7 overall pick for the New York Jets. But as we get closer here, I want to break down some other options for the Jets. And we've heard some possibilities of the Jets trading back. So what I want to break down today is, right, we've talked a lot about the 7th overall pick, who could be there for the Jets, who the Jets might draft. It feels like it's between Membu and Warren. That's been the debate for months now. But today I want to break down some options in a world where the Jets move back. Take a look at some of the top prospects that could be available to them and who they might move back and end up drafting. So obviously it takes 2 to tango. You've got to, everybody always says, oh, trade back. Well, you need a team that wants to trade up. So I just want to give a list of teams that I think could potentially move up to number 7 with the Jets. The Saints at number 9, I could see maybe moving up if they want to secure Shadur with the injuries to obviously Derek Carr. That could happen. Number 11, the 49ers, I could see moving up. Maybe if Mason Graham falls, they want to take a tackle. Number 11. I could see a world where maybe Dallas wants to move up. Let's say Genti slides. They love him, or they love another player at number 7. They want to move up. Jets can move back to 13. I'll throw the Dolphins at number 12. I throw the Dolphins at number 13 in the mix as well to move up. Falcons, number 15. This has actually been rumored by some around the Falcons that they might want to move up for a guy like Jalen Walker to help that defense. So we'll throw the Falcons in there. And then 2 late picks that I could see moving up number 20, the Broncos, and then number 21, the Steelers. Broncos moving up, Muji with the connection. Could the Jets maybe bag a first-round pick next year for moving 13 picks back? And the Steelers, if they get desperate and love Shedeur, let's say, maybe they want to jump New Orleans, move all the way up. Maybe that's a world that we see. I doubt it, but two teams later as well, if the Jets want to move all the way back to 20 or 21. So those are some teams that I could see wanting to move up to number 7. Now, I have a list of prospects here that I just want to break down for some names that the Jets could consider if they move back. Depending on how far they move back, they might take themselves out of Membu. They might take themselves out of running for Warren. Tet McMillan, definitely a guy like Mason Graham would be out of the running as well. So we'll start here with another tight end. Colston Loveland out of Michigan is a name that I think you have to look for if the New York Jets do trade back. 6'6", 248 pounds junior. His stats in 2024, very impressive. 56 receptions, 582 yards, 10.4 yards per reception, and 5 touchdowns. His career numbers in his 3 years at Michigan, which included a national championship, 117 receptions, 1,466 yards, 12.5 yards per reception, and 11 touchdowns. Loveland's been the consensus number 2 tight end in this draft. Even some, Daniel Jeremiah being one of them, who actually believes Loveland might project better than Warren. He actually likes Loveland more than Warren. I wouldn't go that far. I think Loveland is an intriguing prospect. I like some of his abilities, some of his attributes. There is 2 types of tight ends really in this draft. You have your tight ends who are good blockers, good pass catchers. Tyler Warren falls under that category. And then you have your receiving tight ends, don't do as much of as blockers, more of your bigger slots, not as much of your inline tight ends. And that's what Loveland is. If you're looking for a bigger slot, a guy with a lot of pass catching, receiving upside, Loveland is that type of player. You can make the case Loveland projects better as a receiving tight end in the NFL than Warren. But as an overall blocking, receiving combined, it's Tyler Warren. And I think that's pretty clear. Loveland last year had just a 53.3 run blocking grade. 6'5", 245, not necessarily the biggest frame in terms of playing inline. He's a bigger slot, can even potentially play as an X receiver as well, which you see a little bit during his time at Michigan. So receiving, athletic, long arms, very big catch radius, obviously being a tall 6'6". Some of the weaknesses though, right? The blocking, and can improve the route tree a little bit. But this guy's receiving upside and receiving ability is undeniable. A 90.6 receiving grade, just a 3.4% drop rate, an 85.9 overall Pro Football Focus grade last year. Was top 25 in college football in deep catches, does some really good things. He's an intriguing prospect. If the Jets move back, take themselves out of the Warren, the running for Warren, look out for Colston Loveland out of Michigan. I want to go into the trenches here. The Jets draft odds actually got released a couple days ago via DraftKings. And Vegas always knows something, so you always have to keep an eye on that. But what I found interesting was Josh Simmons, tackle out of Ohio State, was on the list for the Jets draft odds, one of the higher odds for the Jets. And I don't love that. To be honest, if the Jets are going to trade back, that was actually with pick number 7. But I like another tackle here for the New York Jets. I don't see it happening at 7, but definitely if you move back, and that's Kelvin Banks out of Texas. 6'5", 315 pounds junior, former 5-star recruit, and provides a lot of versatility and a lot of upside for the Jets. This is a guy that can not only play left tackle, but can also play right tackle, and potentially even, as he moves on, can maybe even move inside to a guard spot. So a guy that you like at both tackle spots, plus can maybe even move inside. Really good versatility. And I also just think he's better than Josh Simmons, in my opinion, in certain areas. Finished last year with an 86.2 Pro Football Focus grade. had a run blocking grade of 81, a pass blocking grade of 89.9, 81.5 zone blocking grade, 70.8 gap blocking grade, and a true pass set pass block grade of 80.8. All of those ranking near the 80th to 90th percentile in college football among tackles with 250 plus blocking snaps. You look at some of the strengths for Kelvin Banks. Athletic, quick out of his stance, hands and footwork are really, really good, and he's versatile. Banks, to me, projects as a high floor. I think the versatility raises that floor a lot, and you look at a lot of his technique on film, a lot of it's really good, refined, solid. Like, good, doesn't need a ton of work, can come in, play right away, step in, do some damage. Not quite an Armand Membu. Membu's definitely projects better, and he is the better player. But again, you're talking about moving back. Kelvin Banks, I'm certainly could see the Jets putting themselves in that situation where Membu off the board, Kelvin Banks available. If they want to still go a tackle, beef up the offensive line, I could see this pick potentially being the case, and I like it. Some of the weaknesses for Banks: does have a shorter height and arms, right, 6'5", and grips to hold on the block. His grip strength at times can be a little weak and causes sometimes defenders to shed off his blocks a little bit easier. So things to obviously need to work on, here at the next level. But Kelvin Banks is a guy out of Texas. I think you like middle of the first round if the Jets do move back and want to still shore up the trenches. I'm going to stay at Texas here, and I'm going to go with a guy that's actually rising. And it's funny because I doubt the Jets take this guy at 7, but you've seen so much hype around him over the last, not even week, really just couple of days, around Matthew Golden out of Texas, who has had a really, really good pre-draft performance after the season at Texas, has just dominated the combine and everything else leading up to it. 5'11", 191 pounds junior. You got to throw it out there. The 4.29 40-yard dash is really what's been skyrocketing his stock. He was the fastest wide receiver at the combine in this class and the second fastest overall. 3 seasons in college football, 2 with Houston and 1 last year at Texas where he took off. 58 receptions, 987 yards, 17 yards per reception, and 9 touchdowns. He was 3rd in the SEC in yards and tied for 1st in the SEC in receiving touchdowns with 9. He had 134 receptions for 1,975 yards, 14.7 yards per reception, and 22 touchdowns in his career. Again, those split between Houston and Texas. You talk about the 40-yard dash. Matthew Golden, you watch him, you look at the numbers, you look at the way he projects, very similar to Garrett Wilson. All Jets fans, of course, very familiar with. That is the one area where maybe you don't love it because you would maybe prefer somebody to be more of that that complement to Garrett Wilson, as opposed to just bringing in a very similar player to Garrett Wilson's play style, if that makes sense. That's been one of the things I've heard people say. Like, yes, Matthew Golden projects as Garrett Wilson, but you would maybe rather bring somebody in that does what Garrett Wilson doesn't do so well. Golden is essentially, you'd have 2 Garrett Wilsons, which wouldn't be a bad thing at all. His yak ability is a strength, athleticism, quickness, footwork, very good inside-out versatility. He can play the slot. He can play outside, typically as a flanker. So has that ability to play inside, has that ability to play outside. That versatility is really important in the NFL. And I would consider a strength being the comparisons to Garrett Wilson. And I think the Jets personally need to do more of what Matthew Golden does well this year, in my opinion. And that is a lot more of those across the middle, even if it's quick 5-6 yard slants across the middle where you can get him the ball in space, get him the ball on the move, and let him do his damage in the open field. Let him, produce that yards after the catch, which we saw him do so well in college, especially last year. So we always talk about it sometimes, right? You remember Garrett Wilson 2 years ago in Dallas when he had that quick play across the middle and went for what, I think 70 yards or something in week 2, the week after the Rodgers injury. If you can see more of that from the Jets this year, I think that's a positive. Matthew Golden could bring that to this team. I still think he's a trade back candidate. I know there's some people saying he's wide receiver number 1 in this class. I wouldn't go that far. I still think Ted McMillan, to be honest, is getting a little too much hate, or I guess draft criticism over the last month. I think Ted McMillan's still a lot better than people are giving him credit for. Will Golden be taken earlier than we expect? Who knows? But in a world where the Jets can move back to 11 or maybe 12, I think Golden could still be there. Take a chance. Could use some work with blocking, and his route Christmas can sometimes be a little lazy, not always so focused on sometimes great route running and the crispness of his routes, which is something he need to work on. But the speed, the yak, the potential, all there. I like Matthew Golden a lot, and I still think there's a world where you move back and you could still get him, even with the recent upsurge in his stock. So that's Matthew Goldman. I want to throw another receiver out here as well, and we'll get to some defensive guys. Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State, who I actually mocked in my trade back edition when I moved back 15 with the Falcons. Falcons came up to get Jalen Walker. I moved back to 15 and got Emeka Egbuka. I've said this a lot about Egbuka. I think Egbuka is criminally underrated. I think there's a lot of draft fatigue with Emeka Egbuka, and that's because we've been talking about him for the last 3 years in a way, right? He could have easily came out of college after 2022. He didn't. Went back. Then 2023 for sure felt like it was going to be his last year. Wasn't. Dealt with an injury-plagued 2023 season, so went back to college, and now he's coming out this year. So you talked about him as a prospect in 2022, 2023, and now here 2024 entering 2025 draft. That's why I think not many people are talking about Emeka Egbuka, but I think you can make a case this guy is arguably the best receiver in this class. I love what Emeka Egbuka did in college, and you love the way he projects in the NFL. 6'1", 202 senior. And another former Buckeye in the Jets, who knows? His 2024 numbers, 81 receptions, 1,011 yards, 12.5 yards per reception, and 10 touchdowns. Had 2 1,000-yard seasons, 2022 and 2024. 2023, of course, an injury-plagued season. His 2024 Big Ten ranks, 5th in receptions, 4th in yards, tied for 3rd in touchdowns. His 2022 Big Ten ranks, 4th in receptions, 3rd in yards, 3rd in touchdowns. So has easily been a top 5, top 10 receiver in the conference over the last, really, his entire career. In his career, 205 receptions, 2,868 yards, 13.9 yards per reception, and 24 touchdowns. And I've always said that the underrated not only has come from the draft fatigue, but also he's played with, right? He was behind Marvin Harrison Jr., and then now this year is Jeremiah Smith, who took college football by storm. Everyone was talking about those guys, and Emeka Egbuka always kind of flew under the radar. But that can't take away what this guy can do, and in my opinion, will do in the draft. You look at some of the strengths. Big-time slot threat. That's what you're getting. You're getting a slot receiver who's a good route runner on short and intermediate routes and can make guys miss. Very kind of soft feet, open field, make guys miss, tough to bring down, which I think is important. Some of the weaknesses, obviously the injury history, missed a good chunk of time in 2023, was in and out of the lineup. That's something to look for. Anytime you have a guy with an injury background, you got to, throw that up there as a little bit of a red flag. Can struggle at times against press corners who contact at the line of scrimmage. I think that's kind of prototypical for a smaller 6'1", 205, 202 slot who isn't the biggest of the world, is going to beat you at speed and open field quickness, not necessarily physicality. I don't think that's too much of a surprise, but that's something that he does sometimes struggle with during his time at Ohio State. I like Emeka Egbuka a lot. And I think him and Golden, I prefer Egbuka a little bit more, but him and Golden, you move back a couple spots. I don't think you can go wrong with either. If the Jets go wide receiver, I don't see it happening. But again, you trade back and you don't love an offensive lineman when you move back, or the tight end's available, or Loveland's off to however far you move back. Maybe you take a wide receiver and then find your tight ends and your trenches help in the middle rounds. So those are primarily the offensive guys. I want to move now over to some defensive guys that could be available. 3 specifically. Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M, the first one. 6'5", 267 junior. I will just say this. I have no interest in the Jets drafting Shamar Stewart at number 7. I know Rich Cimini on his latest Flight Deck podcast talked about 3 players being in play for the Jets, potentially at number 7. Shamar Stewart being one of them. I don't see it happen. He listed him as a wild card. I don't see that happening, number 1, and I don't want that to happen, number 2. I think Stewart is a late day 1 pick. I think you're looking at Shamar Stewart being drafted by the Jets if you move back to a 20 with the Broncos or 21 with the Steelers. Even if you move back to like 15, I don't think you're taking Shamar Stewart. I think Shamar Stewart is an option if you move really far back, where you're moving 13, 14 spots into the late teens, early 20s. Then I think Shamar Stewart becomes a realistic option. The Jets clearly have some interest. Stewart's an athletic freak. That his profile, his scouting report is pretty simple. You are going strictly off of the ceiling of this player. His floor is completely unknown. I mean, his bust potential is very high, and that's not a bad thing. It's just the way it is. His production at college is not that impressive. You look at his numbers in 2024, he had 31 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits, 33 quarterback hurries. This is a guy that only had 4.5 sacks in his career. 4.5 sacks. And I know sacks aren't the end all, but still, you drafting an edge in the first round, you need a guy that's going to get home to the quarterback every single play. Shamar Stewart didn't do that in college. What Shamar Stewart brings to the table, he's an athletic freak. Athletic freak. And one of the comparisons that he's drawn is very similar athletic measurables to Myles Garrett, who also played at Texas A&M. You look at some of the NFL mock draft like freak lists, Shamar Stewart's on those. Fast, quick, elusive, all of those things. High ceiling, very explosive, athletic freak, good size at 6'5" for an edge. All of those things are strengths. The weakness is his floor is completely unknown, lack of production in college, and could use some refining just of like technical stuff. Hand usage isn't great. Pass rush repertoire could use some work, could use some adding on. So there's a lot of work there. Stewart, to me, is a late round first. If the Jets move far back, I think he comes into play. I don't love the idea of taking an edge this early, but again, this is an option. This is just throwing some prospects out there that could be available, could be on the Jets' radar. You're banking on the upside of athletic freak that this coaching staff can refine some of the technical stuff with his technique and his pass rush repertoire and turn him into a productive player where he's getting home to the quarterback, finishing plays, all of that, which you didn't see him do in college. But as a coaching staff, you try and get that out of him here in the NFL. So that's Shamar Stewart. Derek Harmon, I'll throw him out here as well. Feels like the Jets, not feels like they do, they have a lot of interest in Derek Harmon. And I would actually make a case that if the Jets would to trade back, Derek Harmon would be among near the top of like realistic options. Like if you had to predict if they move back, who they might select, Derek Harmon would have to be near the top of that list because the Jets clearly have interest in him. They just had him on a top 30 visit. He's 6'4.5", 313 pounds, redshirt junior. And the Jets need, of course, interior defensive line help. Derek Harmon provides that. 4 seasons in college football, 3 at Michigan State, and 1 at Oregon. You look at the numbers last year, 45 tackles, 5 sacks, 11 tackles for loss, 7 quarterback hits, 43 quarterback hurries. Career stats, 116 total tackles, 8.5 sacks, 18 tackles for loss. You're looking at Derek Harmon as a guy who is going to clog up running lanes. He'll provide a little bit of a pass rusher, not an elite pass rusher by any means. Not necessarily what pops off film when you're watching Derek Harmon. But what he is, he's a guy that's going to clog running lanes, smart plays, bring guys down at the line of scrimmage. He's just a stopping the run. And the Jets need a lot of help in that. They need to be able to stop the run. They need somebody next to Quinnen Williams that can do that. Derek Harmon can bring that to the table. And the Jets have already shown interest in the guy, having him in the facility about a week ago, about 2 weeks ago maybe, for a top 30 visit, which is very notable because you only get so many top 30 visits. Some of the strengths: high football IQ, arm length, quick first step, high motor. Kind of fits the billing of an Aaron Glenn player. Like, he's physical, high motor, quick first step, just tough to stop. Not crazy impressive with, sacks or like stuff like that, but he's going to wear you down. He's going to stop the run. He's going to be a threat in the interior. He's going to clog up running lanes. That's what Derek Harmon's going to do. Quick NFL quickness off the snap, and he can play a 3 tech, which I think is important. Weaknesses: can lose leverage out of stance, footwork, and sometimes can struggle to finish plays. But need a guy next to Quinnen. Derek Harmon could be that mid to late trade back defensive lineman. Jets, of course, have some interest in Mason Graham. A lot of interest in Mason Graham. I think if you're going to move back and take a defensive player, it's going to be the interior. So Derek Harmon out of Oregon. And I'll throw one more other name out here. Kenneth Grant out of Michigan, Mason Graham's teammate. Rich Cimini also labeled this guy as a wild card. Again, I don't see it at 7. Definitely don't see it at 7, but I could see it in a trade back. 6'4", 331 junior, 32 tackles last year, 3 sacks, 5 passes defended actually as well. 7 tackles for loss, 1 quarterback hit, 23 quarterback hurries. In his career at Michigan, 69 tackles, 9 passes defended, 6.5 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, 4 QB hits, and 40 quarterback hurries. Very good size for an interior defensive lineman. Again, 6'4", 331. So good size, quickness, has active hands in passing lanes. Talked about that with those 9 passes defended in his career. That's not everything, but it is notable. Anytime a defensive lineman can kind of have that in his back pocket, his ability to bat passes at the line of scrimmage, get his hands up and cause trouble for a quarterback, it's a nice added weapon to your repertoire. And he's athletic. Some weaknesses: hand usage, can sometimes play it too high and cause himself to get out balanced and sometimes can get beat. But Kenneth Grant, right, look at some of these other numbers: 75.3 pass rush grade, very good against the run last year, 87.5 run defense grade, and a 7.9% run stop rate, both near the top percentile among defensive tackles. So, and another interior guy that can come in next to Quinnen, good size, physical, athletic, stop the run, clog running lanes, and pair well next to him. So Kenneth Grant's another name. I'll throw a couple out here. Not going to dive into these players, but Nick Eman-Rory, I don't see the Jets going safety, but in a world that they trade really far back, again to 20 or 21, he had a crazy combine. His stock has risen up. So Nick Eman-Rory. Josh Simmons, don't love it, but it could happen. Luther Burden, another wide receiver, if they target that. And I doubt it, but depending on how far or how much real this Tet McMillan kind of downward trend on him is, if you move back to 11, maybe he's still there, and maybe you want to go with him. I don't see it happening. I think Golden, Emeka Buka, Luther Burden, those type of guys would be available. I think Tet's going to get taken in the top 10 still, or at least just outside of it. So we'll see how it all plays out. But those are your New York Jets trade back options. If they would to trade back, we've talked a ton about 7. Membu, Warren, that's the number 1 and number 2, it feels like, between those two guys. I think you can't go wrong with either. My preference slightly goes in favor of Warren, but I can totally get on board with taking Membu. I'm fine with either. I'll have my final mock draft tomorrow, so you'll get really more of my thought process there. But wanted to break this down in a video just to break down some other options, talk about some different prospects. And over the next couple days as well, I'll have my mock draft up tomorrow. Darren Muju also speak tomorrow, so I'll talk about that tomorrow. So tomorrow will be a busy day. And then throughout the week as well, I want to take a look at some day 2 options, day 3 options here as we completely round out our draft coverage and head into the weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. in Green Bay. So can't wait for that. So that'll do it. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. What are your thoughts on these prospects? Your thoughts on the possibility of the Jets trading back? Let me know what you think. And until next time, Jets, Jets, Jets.